We are back with another episode of The Gold Standard here on Fox 19 Now. He is Charlie Goldsmith. I am Joe Daneman. We are talking Bengals today. If you're listening to this episode, this is after the Bengals lost to the New York Jets and before they play the Chicago Bears. The big story of the week, Charlie, is the quarterback. Is Joe Flacco going to play on Sunday? Depending on when you listen to this, I don't want to spend too much time on it because it might be time-stamped by whatever happens with Joe Flacco and Jake Browning. So I'm thinking bigger picture here as we look at this season and look at the future of the organization, because a lot of people are starting to question some of the people in high positions here within the organization. So let's start there right now. And this is a hard question to start with, but I'm very curious of your answer. Do you think anybody's on a warm seat right now with the Bengals? We can talk hot seat as we get later into the season, but do you think any seats are warm?
I mean, you always start with the head coach, and I think especially if this season spirals away from the Bengals, if the defense shows no sign of improvement, you look at the fact that, well, Zac has done some tremendous things on offense. His inability to kind of impact the defense in significant ways has just now become a part of the story of the last 3 years of Zac as the Bengals head coach. So I focus on him probably more than anyone because the Bengals have never had a major front office shakeup at the top, because they're not firing Al Golden, because they're not. Dan Pitcher's doing a tremendous job on the offensive side of the ball. Probably some position coaches you'd look at too. Very few defenses that are terrible bring every position coach back, but that's getting in the weeds a bit.
If they were going to do a full blow-up, it would be Duke Tobin. And he's been talked a lot, right, this last couple of weeks as Bengals fans are starting to see some of these young players they invested draft capital in now play and haven't been successful so far as players. When you look back, and you did this recently on Charlie's Chalkboard, when you look back at draft classes and the investment the Bengals have made in drafting, developing on defense, it just hasn't hit for a long time now. What was your takeaway from looking back here several years at what the Bengals have done in the draft defensively?
Well, it's just a lack of a plan in the draft. Like, I like Dax Hill, but they drafted him to be a safety, then they made him an outside corner, then they made him a nickel corner. Cam Taylor-Britt has schematically been like 4 different types of corners in his career, and he's gotten worse every season of his career. They drafted Zach Carter to be an interior pass rusher, and then by the end, he was a one-gap, run-stopping type guy who ended up becoming one of the biggest busts of this era. They drafted Chris Jenkins to be a run stopper, and now he's one of the guys they put on the field in true passing situations and has to rush the quarterback. They drafted McKinley Jackson to be their nose tackle, and then they keep signing nose tackles or adding nose tackles ahead of him. There's just poor vision in terms of who is, except for maybe DJ Turner right now, truly the style and identity of player that you identified leading up to the draft. And the consistency of that not being the case is a real significant problem, long-term concern, short-term area that has the Bengals in the position they are. That all goes back to Duke Tobin.
They invested so much in change defensively, right? Defensive coordinator change, using all the draft capital for change. They dabbled a little bit in free agency. I think everybody listening to this would argue not enough for this team to go from where they were to this year, but they did invest in change on the defense. There's been no return in that investment of positivity of this defense being better this year. Doesn't that ultimately fall at the door of Duke Tobin? And I know in the NFL, when you start talking about hot seats and seasons getting away from teams, the first person people point to is the head coach. And I'm not saying Zac Taylor's not without fault. We all understand that fingers can be pointed at the head coach. He would say, I take accountability myself. But doesn't the fact that the roster defensively just doesn't seem good enough have to fall on Duke Tobin?
He by far has done the worst job, him in the front office, and how they've built this and how they've assembled this roster. You look at who they've signed in free agency. You look at areas they ignored in free agency, positions on the roster. It's bad team building. It's bad synchronicity between the front office and the coaching staff, which is a critical part of being a good general manager, having guys and building a roster of guys who fit where your coach is and where your scheme and where your system is at. It's a poor job, and really this might be my biggest criticism. How many guys did the Bengals feel like they had a great understanding of the intangibles of when they acquired that guy? And now they're looking for leaders, and it turns out, even though they went to their college practices and thought these guys were great hustlers who could play through injuries and lead the guys, aside from some rookies maybe and a couple other guys here or there, none of them really have it, even though the Bengals thought their scouts' boots on the ground found and confirmed those qualities. That's bad player evaluation. That's bad front office.
If you're a big Bengals fan, you understand Duke Tobin is like family within the organization. So it's going to take a lot for them to make that kind of change. We know the Bengals are very loyal, and that goes to both GM, that goes to head coach. We don't know if changes are going to happen. I would argue they shouldn't happen right now in the middle of a season when a team's only one game behind the first place team in Pittsburgh in the win column right now. Pittsburgh leads the division right now with 4 wins. The Bengals have 3 wins, and they own a win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you don't blow this thing up mid-season when there's still a shot for this team to get back in the playoff race. I know it feels like a long shot considering what we watched against the New York Jets, but the reality is it's still very much wide open for this team to make a run in the second half of the season. I want to put a bow on this idea of drafting and Duke Tobin and the lack of talent on defense. I had a thought in my mind after the Jets game just to go back and look for impact players that they've drafted defensively. And I said, and this is very rudimentary of me, I want to find a star that the Bengals have drafted defensively and how long it would take me to find a star, a true star. I had to go back to 2018 when they drafted Jesse Bates. And I think Jesse Bates is a regional star. I don't know if he's looked across the NFL as a star by people in other fan bases the way we look at in Cincinnati as Myles Garrett is a star, as TJ Watt is a star. I don't think people look at Jesse Bates maybe that way. You have to go all the way back to 2010 with Geno Atkins. Geno Atkins is a guy who's going to be in the Bengals Ring of Honor. He was a star. He is a possible Hall of Famer. How is that possible? Yeah. That you can go that long and you take all these swings defensively in the draft and not come up with somebody that hits. And that, to me, was the philosophy this year, right? We have 6 draft picks. We're going to throw 5 guys out there that are defensive players. One of these guys is going to hit. It's so unfair to say that these guys aren't going to hit because they're rookies, right? But are you stunned, shocked? What's the word when you look back at the so many years of drafting and drafting defensive players that they just haven't hit on one guy who surprises everybody and is a star player?
My favorite way to look at it, a different part of the 2018 draft, their 3rd-round pick, Sam Hubbard. Sam had a better Bengals career than Jermaine Pratt in 2019, than Logan Wilson in 2020, than anyone else they've had since then because those guys haven't hit. So the last guy who is as good as a guy who is now retired, they haven't gotten a guy who's better than a guy who's retired since they drafted that guy who retired. It's, again, bad player evaluation. It's bad vision, bad match. It's what, 3 defensive coordinators during that window. What are they? I think a big part of it, too, is there are things that the front office really prioritizes. Size on the edge.
Yep.
All their edge rushers are like 6'4" to 6'6", 260 to 280. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, you need someone to wind up and go. And then when you look at some of the Bengals' biggest draft misses, it's Myles Murphy over Nolan Smith, who is undersized. The Bengals couldn't draft him. He doesn't fit their scheme, their system. But his speed, he can get to the quarterback. One of the most fun, dynamic edge rushers in the league, 2nd-round pick, I believe taken right after Cam Taylor-Britt, Nick Bonito. He's an unbelievable player, but he wasn't going to fit the Bengals because he was too small. He was too slender. Well, he fits one of the best defenses in football just fine. You can point to more examples like that where that archetype is something that needs to change.
I wrote down 3 words here about the Bengals defense that I want you to rank these. You don't necessarily rank them, but what do you think is the biggest reason why the defense is playing as poorly as they are? I wrote down void of talent, void of leadership, void of experience. Talent, leadership, experience. Which of those 3 do you think is the biggest reason why the Bengals defense looks the way it does, especially on Sunday against the Jets?
It's funny because I want to start with talent because the players are, and these are your words, so I'm playing the game. But like Myles Murphy has raw talent, Shamar Stewart has raw talent, Dax Hill, but that's never been coalesced in any sort of realistic way. So, and I blame the players on this, I blame the coaches on this, I blame the front office for not having the vision. It's like the ecosystem of player development has just been such a failure that guys who do have, combine talent can't end up doing anything. Dax Hill has done some, but can't end up doing anything in a lot of cases for the Bengals. With that being the theme, I loop under talent. I'll go talent first, experience second. because I think some of their best leaders are unexperienced players, and then leadership third. But that's a huge problem that we've been talking about since May.
And we've been talking about it this week with the players-only meeting, and we've entered the portion of the season when they go to the players-only meeting. And I know a lot of people roll their eyes at those things. Have you had conversations with players about what happened in that meeting? What have you gathered from what the point of that meeting was to help this team get on track?
Not a ton. I have more work to do on that. The sense I get, though, is it was a meeting more older-centric than young. It wasn't the young guys saying, this is our defense now, like, go away. Old guys, it was the opposite of that. And so kind of in some ways that's more status quo, but that's a part of the mess they're in.
Well, I talked to Demetrius Knight about this off camera. We were on the record, so I can share it here. I asked, can young guys be leaders? Because he fits the profile, doesn't he, of a guy that you'd want to be a leader?
Him and Barrett Carter more than anyone. I think Barrett Carter could be the guy who's the next big captain of this Bengals defense.
So I asked him that, and he said, well, at this point, I think the best way to be a leader as a young guy is to be a listener. And that shows to me what you said, the status quo, that it's the OGs that are in the room, right? The B.J. Hills, pick whatever leaders you want out of there. The funny thing is, you say that, you start trying to rattle these guys off. I don't know if Trey Hendrickson is really in that form speaking.
There was a scene today, Thursday at practice. Everyone was practicing. Logan Wilson's out with a calf injury. Hendrickson's out with the hip. And, man, they're just sitting on the bikes, just as all practices. And it's like it's a image. And obviously they're hurt. That's fine. But just the body language, just the visual of them in that moment, they just seem beaten down by all this. They're probably like, man, what happened? Yep. What happened to this team that we used to be star players of playing at an elite level? Like, watching them watch practice was a reminder to me of how much disconnect there is between the old core and the young core.
I remember back during baseball season when we did this show, and I would ask you about contenders for the wild card. And the Reds ultimately won the wild card, went to the playoffs. And I would ask about the Giants. I would ask about, pick Team X. And you said, look for what they're telling us.
Yeah.
Right? You remember saying that? I wonder here, and this is just a theory. Maybe it's a bit of a conspiracy theory of mine. Look for what the Bengals are telling us by playing the young players and allowing them to go through growing pains. Are they telling us that they believe, they being the coaches, that they're in such a safe spot they can experiment and let the young players play through the growing pains? And they're going to be fine. Their jobs are going to be fine. The season's a wash.
I see what you mean by that, yes.
That Joe Burrow's out. It's kind of our get-out-of-jail-free card. Play the young guys and start getting ready for next year and see what we've got. Does that theory float?
What it is this isn't good enough. We need anything else. And some more intangibles, some more guys digging into the roots and playing with a certain style that, in their estimation, clearly, Logan Wilson wasn't providing. And Trey's different. Trey's been playing great, but also he's kind of he's not Sam Hubbard. He's not Von Bell. That's just not who he is as a presence kind of guy. But yes, like when we write the story of the Bengals season in January, we're going to be pointing to the Logan Wilson, Barrett Carter decision as a keystone moment of the story of the season that showed they believed this wasn't good enough. And they felt like they had to do anything different. And the best card they felt like they had was putting in a rookie over a captain. And that shows a lot about how they felt about where things were at and how things would have gone if they stayed with the status quo.
You did a full rewatch of this defense after they played the Jets. What stood out to you most about what you saw when you went back and watched that game a second time?
You know what? And of course it was the tackling. That's the answer. But the communication was really, really poor. And that's not, you got to let these kids play fast on the grass, but you could feel their heads spinning, with the pointing and the signaling and it felt like the Jets were like messing with them at times. And then especially in the pass game, you saw this. You even saw this consistently in the pass game with a fourth-year corner, Cam Taylor-Britt. Well, there's a communication error. There's a guy running open. There's a guy not getting passed off in coverage. There was a 2-point conversion, the first one the Jets had. The Bengals didn't even have the right guys on the field. And they were late subbing Demetrius Knight to get in there. And, that was all a mess. There was this communication stuff that you need just to play clean football that the Bengals were doing a very poor job at. And then they couldn't tackle either.
The word I heard both from Zac Taylor and Al Golden about the defense was hesitant, that they looked hesitant at the point of attack. And I go back to the play where Al Golden blitzes Jordan Battle on the 4th down where Justin Fields threw his only touchdown pass, and he has a free run at Justin Fields. And my son, who's a Bengals fan, he's a teenager, said, "Dad, it looked like me doing a closeout in basketball where you chopped your feet and put your hand up instead of running through the player and tackling him." And although I laughed when he said it, I went back and looked at it, and he's 100% right. I'm so curious to why these guys feel hesitant. Is it because they're inexperienced? Now, Jordan's not an inexperienced player, but he's still relatively young. Do you think that just goes back to this team having an inexperienced problem on the defense, communication, hesitancy, afraid to fire their gun at the point of attack? Is that the ultimate problem here? They're just so inexperienced?
It's like they always don't know what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Like the Battle thing is the most alarming one, but the points I'm going to make are a bit different. Like there was a play where Demetrius Knight like runs in a circle.
I saw
There was
that.
a play where Shamar Stewart's like doing some sort of zigzag on the opposite side of the man. Shamar Stewart ends up on the ground a lot, but that's a conversation for another day. There are moments where guys are, or do I go this way? And they're stuck in their own indecision, and then they often go the wrong way, and that opens up opportunities for a team like the Jets. Guys are trying so hard to not do the wrong thing, and then you see them on tape, and you're like, how'd they end up there? And then they're out of position, and when you're out of position, you miss tackles.
That's 15 good minutes on the defense. Let's go now to the Gold Rush. This is rapid fire questions. We're going to hit on the offense and some bigger picture stuff here. So let's start with the offense right now. The run game is what? I leave a blank for you right now. The run game is, I would say, ascending. I leave it to you. The run game is blank.
Exciting. Let me tell you this, just Chase Brown, if one more defender dives at his ankles one more time, like defenders, stop doing that, I'm telling you right now. He makes exciting things happen so regularly in a backyard football style way. And then he's more freed up because he has Piron being able to take in some of those snaps, and Piron's just not getting his 4 yards. He's trucking through guys. He's showing power. You have Chase Brown, even as a pass catcher, running savvy, or slick is the best word, routes out of the backfield. Like, they're just making stuff happen. There's just a lot of stuff that's fun to watch here. It's a unit that has its confidence.
And Chase Brown's also a decision maker in the pass game because of the flea flicker.
That's right.
That didn't happen. You and I were both curious about this. That was supposed to be pitched back to Joe Flacco, but he saw out of the corner of the eye that play was being blown up. He turned around, and I think he got a first down gain out of it. It was a great play by Chase Brown. Okay, next question in rapid fire here, part of the Gold Rush. T. Higgins getting 2 targets in a game is what?
It happens. Jamar, keep feeding him the ball. I have no problem with any of that. They were throwing the ball to the running backs a lot. They found some nice under center stuff that featured Noah Fant. Now, sure, could a couple of Jamar's targets gone to T? Great. Down the stretch on the final 2 drives, Flacco on the final drive probably didn't have quite the arm strength to get it to T a couple times. And then also the Jets completely changed their plan in the 4th quarter and sent some unbelievably aggressive double teams at T. So that's business. That's a part of it. T still helps open things up for Jamar and the passing game as a whole, and he did catch a 40-yard touchdown. Still a very valuable player, and there will be other matchups where he's much, much more heavily featured. I would bet this week T is a big week.
Okay, next question in the Gold Rush rapid fire for Charlie will be a 2-part question on the AFC North. As it stands currently, Pittsburgh has 4 wins in first place. The Bengals have 3 wins in second place. The Baltimore Ravens, with Lamar Jackson back, with 2 wins. The Bengals' place in the AFC North is what?
I mean, they're alive. They have a chance. They can go into Pittsburgh and really make it a race. I'm probably most concerned about the Ravens because the Steelers, I mean, we just saw it on Thursday night. There's very little that strikes fear into you, except for Freiermuth. I like their tight end. Their offensive line has had some solid stretches this season, but they're not scary, unless you have guys on the back end making terrible mistakes in coverage like the Bengals did. I'm more scared of the Ravens. The Bengals are alive. The Browns, no one ever explained to me why they drafted Dylan Gabriel. That still doesn't make sense to me, but that's another podcast.
Fantastic. Okay, the second part of the 2-part question here on the AFC North is If you were going to pick a favorite to win the AFC North, who would it be?
I think I'm going to go with the Ravens.
Yeah, me too.
I just see the Steelers' defense crumbling in. Like their top safety just got hurt, and now they have two like their two safeties now are the guys who were the starters on the 2024 Patriots, who were a terrible defense. Like, why'd you just take their safeties? It's all a mess.
I would think 10 wins probably wins the AFC North. That means
9 in a tiebreaker probably.
Good.
So keep winning in your division now. But I can't even do that. Sorry, this is one of the worst defenses in football. I can't even do the whole win your divisional games because the Bengals defense hasn't shown me it can stop anybody.
Isn't that funny, though? We talked all offseason about get off to a hot start, win your division games, and you'll be good. And the Bengals won their first 2 games to start the season, 2-0 in the AFC North, and here they are right now in the middle of the pack, and it doesn't look great for the rest of the season. I'm with you on the Ravens, although if the Ravens were to get to 10 wins, that would be 8-2 the rest of the way. Look at their schedule. It seems doable considering their schedule. They do have the Bengals twice. They do have the Steelers twice. We'll see as the season goes on. Last question here in the Gold Rush. I was about to phrase it, can the Bengals win on Sunday? Certainly they can win against the Bears. How do the Bengals beat the Bears on Sunday?
A tricky question to answer because I don't know what the Bears' injury situation is going to be. There's a very good chance that they enter this game with like no receivers and no corners.
They just did that against the Jets.
And then all of a sudden, that's fair. But even to a higher degree, but then all of a sudden this becomes a game like how can you exploit guys who have no idea what they're doing versus a game where you try to establish your game plan and the run and the pass and you're doing some real football stuff. Is this a real football game or is this a novelty game? The Bears injury report will probably have the biggest decision or determining factor in that. Really, though, at some point Flacco's going to have to rip it and make a throw. Is his shoulder strong enough to do that?
The gold nugget now to finish up the gold standard. The gold nugget is when we dive into Charlie's notebook for a great story or a great nugget, a great anecdote. I've been reading all of your Charlie's chalkboard, so I'll leave it to you to tell everybody what you're most proud of this week.
I thought this was just a fun one. You know, we talked about how fun the running game has been. So Chase Brown and Samaje Perine both had their moments against the Jets. They were really hot, and the Bengals believe in the hot hand at running back.
Yeah.
And when Chase Brown was rolling, he's going to the sideline. Man, I'm hot. I'm fired up. He's shouting. He's flexing. Then Perine in the fourth quarter gets even hot. He's ripping up 20-yard runs, long touchdowns. Doesn't say a single word. 2 guys in a nutshell.
That's Samaje Perine, very much so. It was cool, too, that when they were rolling, Orlando Brown was looking into the sideline. If you're just listening on the podcast, I'm doing a circular motion with my finger, say, keep it rolling, keep it going. And if you didn't come out to Bengals Now on Wednesday night this week, we talked to Orlando about that. He said there's no better feeling as an offensive lineman. It doesn't have to be running. It can be throwing the ball down the field when you have it rolling like that to tell the bench, they've got to feel you, that you're confident. We've got these guys. And he said they were confident. Fortunately, it didn't come out to a win. Charlie needs to go cough.
I got nothing.
He's got to go cough. Just get it all out. Get it all out.
See you next week.
That was the gold standard. We'll do it again next week. For Charlie Goldsmith, I'm Joe Danneman. Thanks for listening.